but everybody knows everybody else. The problem that I have is that it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's the same thing with the Nine, this famous thing that I talk about in Sinister Forces, right? You have these disparate individuals. You think they have nothing in common, nothing to do with each other. And then you pull at a certain thread and they all come together, right?
So tell us who are the Nine?
Well, it actually connects to this whole story too, in its own way. So you have the Nine. Of course, this was in 1952 to 1953, there's this famous guy, not famous yet at the time, Andrija Puharich, a guy with medical training and technical training. He's involved in, technology, for medical purposes and stuff. But he also gets involved with a bunch of sort of borderline psychic people, right? Back in the late 40s, early 50s, there were seances and there was like psychic phenomena research and stuff going on. J.B. Rhine was doing his thing, studying ESP. And so you have a guy like Puharich who finds himself up in the woods in Maine. He was supposed to be back in the city. He was going to go to take up a position in California, I think. But he gets involved with these people. And to make a long story short, there's a seance that's held in late 52, early 53. I think it was the New Year's Eve of 52 to 53.
These contacts I've had, and I hope we can get all this material out so you can read the nitty-gritty details as it has built up over since we made the first contact that I didn't mention on December 31st, 1952. So it's been a 37-year collection of wisdom, and just to feel the good vibes of these people, I'm talking about them, is very important. There's so much confusion on that one area. And, we have Satanists to confound the issue. And, we have Satanists to confound the issue. We have all kind of people with weird ideas. They're not straight arrows in the sense we're talking about, ethically, morally, biologically, and so on and so on. They're not straight arrows in the sense we're talking about, ethically, morally, biologically, and so on and so on. So anyway, that's about all I can say at this point. But
we were able to clothe ourselves in a replica visible in the third density of our mind, body, spirit complexes in the sixth density. We were allowed this experiment by the council which guards this planet. Question 6.8. Questioner, where is this council located? Ra, this council is located in the octave or eighth dimension of the planet Saturn, taking its place in an area which you understand in third-dimensional terms as the rings. Question 7.10. Questioner, you mentioned the 9 who sit on the council. Is this a circumflex euro or 9 a circumflex euro, the same 9 as those mentioned in this book? Questioner gestures to Yuri. Answer, I am Ra. The Council of 9 has been retained in semi-undistorted form by two main sources, that known in your naming as Mark and that known in your naming as Henry. In one case, the channel became the scribe. In the other, the channel was not the scribe. However, without the aid of the scribe, the energy would not have come to the channel. Question 7.11. Questioner, the names that you spoke of, were they Mark Probert and Henry Puharich? Were they Mark Probert and Henry Puharich? Answer, I am Ra. This is correct. The social memory complex desiring this project lays it before the Council of Saturn. If it is approved, quarantine is lifted. Question 7.9. Questioner, I have a question about that council. Who are the members and how does the council function? Answer, I am Ra. The members of the council are representatives from the Confederation and from those vibratory levels of your inner planes bearing responsibility for your third density. The names are not important because there are no names. Your mind, body, spirit complexes request names, and so, in many cases, the vibratory sound complexes which are consonant with the vibratory distortions of each entity are used. However, the name concept is not part of the council. If names are requested, we will attempt them. However, not all have chosen names. In number, the council that sits in constant session, though varying in its members by means of balancing, which takes place, what you would call irregularly, is 9. What you would call irregularly is 9. That is the session council. To back up this council, there are 24 entities which offer their services as requested. These entities faithfully watch and have been called guardians. The council operates by means of what you would call telepathic contact with the oneness or unity of the 9, the distortions blending harmoniously so that the law of one prevails with ease. With the oneness or unity of the 9, the distortions blending harmoniously so that the law of one prevails with ease. When a need for thought is present, the council retains the distortion complex of this need, balancing it as described, and then recommends what it considers as appropriate action. This includes 1. The duty of admitting social memory complexes to the Confederation. 2. Offering aid to those who are unsure how to aid the social memory complex, requesting aid in a way consonant with both the call, the law, and the number of those calling, that is to say, sometimes the resistance of the call. 3. Internal questions in the council are determined. These are the prominent duties of the council. They are, if in any doubt, able to contact the 24 who then offer consensus judgment thinking to the council. The council then may reconsider any question.
And there are 9 people involved in the seance. Now, these are not just some casual 9 people you pick up like, your neighbors or something, right? This was a DuPont and an Astor and a Forbes. I mean, everybody that represents the blue-blooded Brahmins of American society, old money people, were at a seance, a freaking seance, right? In the woods in Maine on New Year's Eve. These people don't do New Year's Eve that way normally, right? There's big parties and there's champagne and there's God knows what. In this case, they're all sitting around a seance table with Andrija Puharich. And one of them is the guy who was the inventor of the Bell helicopter, right? So
Is that Arthur Young?
Arthur Young. So Arthur Young is there with his wife. His wife is Ruth Forbes Young, right? She had a lot of names. She was excessively nomenclatured. And so you have, Ruth Forbes Young. She's a Forbes. She was married to a George Lyman Payne, and also married to Arthur Young. So she had all of these pedigrees all mixed in together. And she was the best friend of, I think her name was Mary Douglas, if I'm not mistaken, who was the paramour of Alan Dulles. So Alan Dulles, which keeps coming up in these conversations, his girlfriend is the best friend of Ruth Young, married to Arthur Young. So already there's this weird connection, right? And when I say best friends, I mean they told each other everything.
Think it's possible that's the return of
Christ.
Yeah.
Question 17.21. Questioner, what density is the entity known as Jesus in now? Answer, I am Ra. This information is harmless though unimportant. This entity studies now the lessons of the wisdom vibration, the 5th density, also called the light vibration. Question 17.22. Questioner, in our culture there is a saying that he will return. Can you tell me if this is planned? Answer, I am Ra. I will attempt to sort out this question. It is difficult. This entity became aware that it was not an entity of itself but operated as a messenger of the one creator whom this entity saw as love. This entity was aware that this cycle was in its last portion and spoke to the effect that those of its consciousness would return at the harvest. The particular mind, body, spirit complex you call Jesus is, as what you would call an entity, not to return except as a member of the Confederation speaking through a channel. However, there are others of the identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those to the 4th density. This is the meaning of the returning.